Hello and welcome to this next episode of Mattanory. It's springtime and I'm outside. How lovely. It is quite warm right now, so it's nearly St David's Day, so I wanted to do a Welsh story today. It's called The Sleeping King. Some of you probably already know this story, but enjoy it anyway. Once upon a time there was a man who was called Tom, and he used to wander Wales just looking for work or places to stay, or would just listen to people's stories and hopefully earn a coin or two. The people would often call him Raggedy Tom or Tom the Tramp. Well, let's, for this story, just call him Tom. One day he was sitting alongside a dirt road somewhere in Wales. He was just minding his own business and watching the world go by and thinking about where he could get his next money from. An old man was passing by and stopped to talk to him. The old man was well dressed, and Tom thought, he must be rich, so if I sit and listen to him for a while, I may be able to earn a buck or two from this one. So he listened to him for a while and answered his questions. Still didn't get any money for his trouble. The old man carried on talking to him, and he was quite curious about the old battered walking stick that Tom had had for many years. He wanted to know exactly where Tom had got it. So still, Tom, hoping for some money and basically having nothing else better to do, he took the old man round to an old ancient hazel tree from which he'd cut the stick many moons ago. The tree was growing next to a well on a small featureless hill. The old man seemed pleased with himself and stroked his long beard. This is the place. Now please, give me that stick. Tom had told the old man where the stick was from, and then he'd gone out of his way to show him the place, and still had nothing for his troubles. And he wasn't sure if he wanted to part company with his favourite stick after it had been good to him over the years. And he didn't want to end up with nothing. I think the old man might have been reading his mind a little bit and said, "Here, for your troubles." And he reached into a silk purse and pulled out a lovely weighty gold coin. Tom thought, that seems like a good swap. A gold coin for this old stick. I suppose I can always get another one. And it had quite a satisfying weight to it. So he took the coin. Then the old man rode the stick above his head and then thrust it into the ground. And all of a sudden, branches came from the stick. And at the end of those branches, leaves and tiny flowers appeared. The whole hill seemed to shudder. And it was as if new life had begun. And then all of a sudden in the ground, a small hole appeared in the hillside, just like the entrance to a cave. "That's not something you see every day," said Tom. He did have a knack of understating it and also stating the obvious. "I didn't know my stick could do that." He was beginning to wonder if selling the stick for just one gold coin was such a good idea after all, if it could do all that magical stuff. So he knelt down and thought, "I'll have a look inside this hole." He peered into the dark tunnel, and just inside he could see the gleam of a bell. "Small hole that," said Tom. "It's just the size it needs to be," said the old man, getting down onto his hands and knees. "And I suppose you want to know what's inside this hill?" "Yeah, I suppose," Tom shrugged. "Well, you can follow me in if you want," the old man continued, "but make sure you do not ring that bell." Tom had nothing better to do that day, and he thought, well, there might still be something in it for me. He followed the old man into the tunnel. It was large enough, but the edge of the sleeve did slightly brush the bell, and it shimmered, but fortunately it did not ring. Tom held his breath, but it was okay. As soon as they passed the bell, the tunnel widened into a large cavern, which seemed bigger than the hill itself. But Tom, being a simple man, didn't really think about it too much, because it hurt his head to consider how is it bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. So basically he stopped thinking about it. All around the edges of this cavern were burning torches that only gave off light, no heat and no smoke. And in the flickering light, he could see a circle of men lying on the ground, and their elaborate armour gleaming in the darkness. And in the centre, on a raised dais, lay a man in beautiful chainmail, wearing an encrusted jewelled crown. "Are they dead?" asked Tom. "No, they are just sleeping." "And who is he?" said Tom, pointing to the crowned man. "He is the once and future king. For now he and his men sleep, but when the world needs him, the bell will ring to wake them up, and they will ride out of this hill and come to our rescue." And it was only then that Tom noticed there were sleeping horses in the shadows at the outer edges of the cavern, and piles of treasure surrounded the sleeping knights: coins, gemstones, jewellery, pictures and cups. And seeing the glint in Tom's eye, the old man said, "You may take what you need, but be careful not to wake the sleeping king and his knights. It is not yet their time." Tom, seeing the opportunity, happily helped himself to the piles of treasure. He stuffed it in his pockets and down his raggedy trousers and all down his sleeves, and he even fashioned a little bag out of his handkerchief. He was quite pleased with that. The thing is, the more he took, the more he felt he needed. But after a while, he could carry no more. Meanwhile, the old man was going about whatever business he had come to do. And after a while, he announced to Tom that it was time to go, and gestured towards the tunnel for which they came down from. Tom had forgotten how narrow the last bit of the tunnel was. And obviously he had slightly increased his girth with all the jewels that he had pushed inside his sleeves and in his pockets and all over his person. He tried to slip past the bell, but one of his pockets hit it, and it began to ring loudly and incessantly. There was an almighty clatter behind him as the knights woke and sprang to their feet. "Is it time?" the king roared. "No, it is not yet time," said the old man. "Please, you must go back to sleep." And with a great sigh, the banging and clanging stilled. But Tom did not dare to look back into the cavern. He did not dare to wait for the old man either. He started running and didn't stop until night had overtaken him. He wandered quite far from that hill until he was sure that no one was going to come after him or see him. He used his treasure to buy a large mansion house. He hired a house full of servants, held many balls where he would buy the best wine and best food, and all that was consumed. But he had quite expensive tastes, and before a year and a day was out, he had used up all his money, and he had to take to the streets once more. He wandered around trying to find the place where the king had slept and was buried. He couldn't even find another walking stick quite as sturdy as the one he once had. All he had left was this story. But no one really believes it, do they?